Let me know if you are on a team that is just that rocking it out of the park. Like, man, we get each other. There's less conflict. We really get each other, and that we work well together. We're productive. We're efficient, and really everyone should be jealous of us. And so those teams are out there, like they really are, although they tend to be a little bit rare. So most of us are stuck on less than ideal teams, and it doesn't mean that people aren't skilled or that they aren't really good people on the skills. Oh, morning, Krista. It is cold. I'm happy to not go outside for a little bit. But most of us are stuck on less than ideal teams, and we struggle with what we can do about it. So I just want to share some insights about a tool that I use called DISC. So each of us have natural behavior tendencies, and DISC is worked based on the work of Carl Jung, and most of us have a mix of 2 or 3 of the 4 main tendencies, but we generally have a predominant one. And so our teams generally have a mix of these, and oftentimes the person on that team who we just don't get, or who we maybe really frustrates us, is probably just a different style than us. And once we understand what that style is, we get them better, and we can show up with more compassion and understanding about how they are showing up. So once we understand the styles of others on our team, it goes a long way towards understanding them and how we can adopt our communication style. So there's 4 main styles according to DISC, and it's D, I, S, and C. So D is for dominant, I is for influence, S is for steadiness, and C is for conscientiousness. And how do you know what you are? You can answer a couple of questions. Number 1, are you more task-focused or people-focused? So if you are task-focused, then you're worried about things like procedure and function, results, programs, plans, projects, process. If you're people-focused, you're worried about relationships, caring, sharing, emotions, feelings, friendships. And the second question is, are you more active and reserved? And this is not at all equivalent to introvert and extrovert. And so that's what I used to think in the beginning, and it's not like that at all. And so if you are active, you're fast-paced, you're willing to make quick decisions, you're involved, energetic, optimistic, you're positive, you're enthusiastic, and you are worried about the future. And so you think often about the future. If you are reserved, you tend to be a little bit more slower paced, you're cautious, concerned, sometimes you're reluctant or critical thinking, discerning, and you are focused on past and present. So if you take the task versus people on the vertical axis and the active versus reserved on the horizontal axis, then it gives you 4 different quadrants. So if you are task and active, you are D, or dominant. People and active, you're I, or influence. People in reserved, your S, or steadiness, and task and reserved, your C, or conscientiousness. And so understanding your natural tendency helps you customize and adapt your communication style. So for example, a very direct D style might read an email and it's direct and it's to the point. And an I style might be offended. They're like, oh, what about me? Don't you care about me? And so if a D is writing to somebody who is people focused, they're going to have to stop and say, okay, I'm going to have to add a little bit more hi and how are you, and that people focus. If an I is writing to a D style and they're full of all the things that happen on the weekend, they might want to put that later in the email and just really get to the point in the beginning, because that's what a D style wants. And so it's really important to understand the different styles so that we can adapt and really meet their needs. Oh, thanks, Krista. DISC has been really, really helpful to me to understand as well. D styles tend to say what they're thinking when they're thinking it. And often people will take that as condemnation of what they're trying to say. They're like, oh, you know what? That person doesn't think that what I'm saying is valuable. They think I'm dumb. They don't like my idea. And that isn't the case at all. We often hear somebody will say to a D, why are you mad at me? Like, and the D style's like, what are you talking about? Just because of the way they come across, they tend to be a little more assertive and aggressive, and other styles will take that as being mad, where that isn't the intent at all. So once we understand that about another style, then we can show up with more grace and understanding, and we can kind of preempt some of those conflicts that we might internalize otherwise. So You can absolutely, by answering those questions, figure out what your predominant style is. We also do DISC assessments. I can do DISC assessments. Um, and that will give you a really detailed report on your style, as well as your motivations, what reduces your motivation, how you might show up under pressure, and give you specific advice based on your specific style about how to interact with each of the other styles. So teams who understand each other and communicate well are more efficient and more productive. They're not dragged down by misunderstandings and what some people might view as a personality conflict. They get that when the D interrupts them, it's not a commentary on what they're presenting, and they don't take it personally. A D style isn't as annoyed with the amount of time that I style might spend checking in with people and how they're feeling and how they're showing up. So understanding is the first assessment. DISC assessments and training can help with that. So your DISC assessment also includes an excellent overview of your style with general information about each of the 4 styles, so you can really learn about each of them. And it gives you specific do's and don'ts. And so, like I mentioned before, we are rarely just one style. There are a few people who are just a D or just an I, but most of us have a little bit of a mix in there. So for me, my predominant style is an S, but I'm fairly equally balanced between S, C, and I. And so what that helps me understand is, based on that specific combination, should I interact with the D, I, S, and C? And it gives me specific do's and don'ts, which is really, really, really helpful. So I'm working on a really free course overview that people can sign up for, and it'll give you a little bit about each profile. It should launch in the new year and give just a really high level overview of DISC and each of the little styles. I'm also planning some free webinars and some other online training. And while I typically do DISC with groups to build strong teams, I'm going to offer in the new year, I'm going to offer some individual assessments so that people can just do it and learn a little bit more about each other. You can do a paired assessment. So, you know, if you and your spouse, or you and your partners, you and somebody you work with all the time really want to know each other a little bit better and how to communicate better, we can look at doing something like that. So what's neat about DISC is there's lots of different reports that we can do. So we can have the individual overview. I can pull team reports, leadership reports, sales reports, and a paired report. I think it's really important also to notice that while we have a predominant or style, that we can exist and live in any of the styles. What DISC tells us is not that we can't do those things, it's what is natural and how will we show up the most naturally. So D styles tend to make really, really quick decisions. As an S style, I do not tend to make quick decisions. That doesn't mean I can't, it just means it won't be my natural way that I show up. And under pressure and under stress, I will revert to what I feel most comfortable in. So it'll also understand if I'm in a job where I have to constantly make really quick decisions without being able to consider people and how things will impact the people, that will make me tired and make me more stressed. So this gives me all that kind of insight.